Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with Thomas Miller. Are you tired of your tweens, teens, and young adults' negative behaviors and poor choices holding you emotionally hostage, controlling your family, and ruling your life? Do you feel like you're riding an emotional roller coaster every time you walk into your house? If you answered yes, then you're in the right place. This podcast is a community for courageous parents just like you who come here to gain effective tools, skills, and learn concrete action steps that they can take to be more confident, calmer, and more empowered while parenting and changing their tween, teen, or young adult's life and improving their family's future. Welcome to the Four Peaks Parents Podcast with your host, Thomas Miller. So glad that you can join. Today's topic is called Tear and Repair. What the heck is this guy talking about? So as you think about muscles, right? There's micro tears, not full on tears, right? But micro tears, and then our body sends blood and nutrition to those little micro tears. And believe it or not, the muscles get stronger and they grow and they get thicker, right? The same thing is true here. And when it comes to our relationship with our kiddos, particularly teenagers, right? Or young adults or tweens. Tweens, teens, or young adults for sure. Let me tell you a story that I'm sure you'll relate to. This week, I probably did about 4 parent coaching sessions that day, and I had 2 therapy clients. So it's like 6 people in a row. And of course, I have this podcast, and of course, I'm producing content on Instagram and newsletter and all kinds of fun stuff. And I came home and I was fried, and I forget where my wife was, but I was on the dinner routine, and my kids were, oh my God, just psychotic. And my my teenager asked, "What's for dinner?" Like it's like, you already know where this is going. Um, it's like being at a diner, like he's going to order. And I, told him, what did I make? I think it was like pasta with meat sauce or something. And I think he said something like, I don't even know if it was like again or like, or that's so whack or like really, or like, why aren't we having da da da? Right. And if you've been there, like you are fried, you are like compassion fatiguing and like, oh my God, no tools, no frustration tolerance, no insulation, button board exposed. And I was like, you got to be shitting me right now, and kind of like lost my crap on him, right? Like, how can you ask me that? And da da da, and da da da, this whole thing, right? So, not my biggest, parenting moment, not my biggest or best, I should say. We've all been there. We've all, lacked patience, frustration tolerance. That was not water off a duck's back. And I personalized that and was crispy. And so what happened there is that I caused a little bit of damage, caused a little tearing, right? And because I am a licensed clinical social worker in the state of Massachusetts and a supposed parenting expert, which I actually am, do you think I was easy on myself, or do you think I was hard on myself? Well, if you guess the latter, you are correct. You get the prize. I was very hard on myself. And the reason I was hard on myself is because I felt shame and I was blaming myself. And I'm glad that I, feel bad, because that tells me I'm not a sociopath, which is a good thing. Sociopaths have no capacity for guilt or remorse and never feel bad about anything. So that's always a good thing. But what we're going to talk a lot about today is how blame gets in the way of the repair, and how the story that we either allow ourselves to tell ourselves about us as parents, how that gets in the way, or how we allow our kids, unfortunately, to leave a negative interaction, creating a negative story about themselves, and how that can perpetuate and do damage as well. So I hope you can identify with my story. Please don't make me feel alone, as if I'm the only parent who's ever yelled or snapped or lost it. I've had, oh my God, thousands and thousands, right, of amazing moments where I have said, either a joke or snap back or actively ignored a statement like that or said ouch or said, hey, when you say something like that and don't appreciate the bigger picture, I feel hurt. And if you continue to, speak in those terms, right, I will let you know how, hurtful this is and how this is not working for me. There's a million times you, me, and everybody else, right, listening to this podcast has used all of our tools and again shared in a vulnerable way how a statement like that hurt our feelings or how we sometimes I'll just say to my kid like, do you want to run that back, like you really you want to stick with that statement, or should we redo that? Why don't you go back out of the kitchen and come back in, or I'm going to come out of the kitchen and come back in, and I'll have a playfulness, or I'll just go over to him and be like, hey, anytime you want to cook, hop on it. It's all good, man. Like here's hop on the ox, as he says all the time. You know, so there's so many times that we've all handled that really well. That was not one of them. And so if I allow that to sit, if I allow that blame to stew and the shame to kind of continue, right? I'm not creating a corrective emotional experience for my child and I. And if I'm allowing my child to go off into their room, there's a really good chance, right? If they go off into their room because they've now yelled something back, I hate you, you suck, or, you know, get into a whole thing. And the interaction ends, let's say, with my child or your child going off into their room. Not only are they most likely on screens and not coping and managing and processing, right, that their own feelings, which is never good. Um, it's going to be the impetus for an inner dialogue that often sounds something like "I'm bad," especially if it's what you said, right? I mean, I'm glad there's no 8 tracks or cassette tapes or records or MP3s or CDs or Spotify's of all the dumb crap I've said to my kids over their 14 and a half and soon to be, wow, holy crap, soon to be 15 years on this earth, and soon to be 12 and a half years on this earth, which is pretty crazy. So I'm glad there's no tape that gets played. But if there was, I'm sure there's some pretty crappy things I've said, such as like, what are you, an idiot? Or like, how could you think that? Or really? Or, oh my God, the list goes on, right? And so think about it. If they're stewing in their room, leaving an interaction that hasn't been repaired, there's been no corrective emotional experience, they're creating a narrative that often sounds a lot like whatever words we just said, or is potentially promulgated even more to the critical. So kids have a penchant to blame themselves. And so again, your child could be sitting in a room after a horrible interaction. You've yelled, you screamed, you snapped, you lost it. Again, I empathize, been there, done that, hence the point of that story. But now you're letting them build ostensibly their own story, which is really a very important building block of who they are and how they're going to navigate this world. So we don't want our kids stewing in this basically, and bathing in this blame bath, right? Where they're coming up with words or stories about themselves being bad or unlovable or no good or they suck, right? And I know the same story is playing out in your head because, again, you're not a sociopath, right? No sociopaths are allowed to listen to this podcast. You're feeling guilty too. And so if we allow that interaction to hang and to not be resolved or addressed, we're either doing a couple of things. We're either doubling down on blaming them and trying to spend a lot of energy on whose fault it is rather than how do we fix it. We're definitely beating ourselves up for our mistakes, right? Especially if you are a licensed clinical social worker like myself and a supposed parenting expert. You're possibly avoiding processing that, which is only going to push emotionality underground and not allow for you and your child to have an emotionally expressive and emotionally safe relationship. It's actually making a relationship become like two ships passing in the night, right? You're going to become more and more detached. And like I said, you're going to feel guilty And if you don't correct that guilt, unfortunately, what that guilt more often than not turns into is actually looking the other way when other behaviors are starting to cook or bloom that are actually pretty caustic, because now we feel bad and we lack the tenacity because we're concerned about becoming a hypocrite to address those things. All right? So the repair is so freaking important. And trust me, I've sat in front of thousands of kids since my very first internship in 1999 at Long Island University, CW Post, and then eventually NYU. My first two internships were in schools. They were in one was in an elementary school, then a middle, and then I was in a alternative high school, a BOCES program on Long Island. And kids will blame themselves for everything. As much as kids externalize blame, trust me, and try to use the hooks of guilt and try to manipulate you and try to exit stage left. I have worked with so many kids, unfortunately, that have been sexually abused, physically abused, neglected, abandoned, kids that have been involved in adjudicated in the legal system, families that Department of Children and Family Services may have been called on, or it's called Child Protective Services in different states. And every time without fail, that child will blame themselves, even though it was clearly their parent who was drinking or drugging, or their parent who was neglecting, or what have you. So understand that your kids are always going to blame themselves. So again, this isn't about making you feel guilty that you've yelled or screamed or whatever. We all have, right? I don't think there's a parent on this earth that has never lost their cool and never raised their voice. But where we can really make a game changer is the repairing. All right, that's the game changer. That's the hack. That's the ointment, right? That's the thing that really is going to help you differentiate yourself from the next parent. And it's going to help your child have an emotionally safe, secure attachment with you, which is going to inform every freaking relationship they ever have in their life. All right. So this is serious stuff, people. So when we repair, we get to actually help our kids edit and omit their propensity, as I just described, to self-blame. How cool is that, right? Do you really want, let's fast forward, let's kick this out a little bit, right? Do we really want our daughter to be in an unhealthy relationship with some a-hole? No. Do we want our daughter to not have voice and choice or power and to be in a relationship dominated by power and control issues? Hell to the no, right? Same would be true for our son, right? Do we want our kids to be working their faces off and have these key performance indicators of their job, or have these metrics they have to hit, or have these goals they have to hit in Q3, and they hit them and they're front loaded? If you hit them, you get this bonus, or you get this commission, or you get this whatever, and then they don't get them. And then do we really want our kids to blame themselves rather than to have the assertiveness, the chutzpah, the agency, the self-love to go and advocate for their boss and be like, hey, right, what's up with that? Of course we don't. Right? We want our kids to be able to say to their college roommate, like, bro, your underwear is always on my side of the room and it's kind of gross and stank, right? So please pick it up. Or we want whatever, our tween, to be able to push back against that boundary violating girl who thinks she's Ms. Diva, right? And Beyonce, and is trying to create a little, like heap, where she's on top of the heap or the hill. And everyone's our little minions. We want our kids to be able to push back. We want our kids to not immediately, again, turn to themselves and blame themselves. So believe it or not, this ability to help our kids repair from our little stupid fight, it seems like minutia or benign. It's not. This is where these stories are being really crafted and cemented. So even if we can't change the memory, if you listen to my previous podcast, the one about the egg incident, I'm giving away too much here. I'm giving all these stories of my shortcomings here. What's going on? I thought I was perfect. So if you listen to the other podcast and then you hear me just lose my crap about my kiddo, basically being like, just not grateful for my meat sauce, which was actually freaking fantastic. Right? If we can't change that memory, well, we might as well at least change the narrative or the story about the memory. Like, how cool is that? That we literally can help change the story that they're telling themselves, about the memory. How cool is that? That event, yeah, that's gonna stay, no biggie, right? But they're gonna remember my mom or dad came into my room, my mom or dad listened, my mom or dad validated, my mom or dad fell on their sword, my mom or dad took responsibility, my mom or dad apologized. I had a father this week actually made I threw it up on Instagram. It was, I think, a reel or a story. But this dad was like, should we ever apologize to our kids? And I understand where he was going. He wasn't going from the perspective of like apologies sometimes are cheap. He was going more from like, I'm trying to hold boundaries and I'm trying to like, not be a doormat anymore and let my kid walk all over me. And that's cool. I get where he's trying to go, but he's kind of flipping, swinging the pendulum too far, right? From one extreme to the other. There's nothing wrong with apologizing. Like I apologize all the time. Now, apologies can be cheap if you don't actually change the behavior, right? Let's be real. And apologies sometimes are about explaining really what you did versus there's a better version of an apology, which is like, hey, how do you feel about what I just did? And I want to listen. And I'm so sorry for having done that. And I take full responsibility for that, right? Or even saying something to the effect of, I'm sorry for doing X, Y, or Z. Would you forgive me? Right? It gives them power to actually forgive you or not. So that skill, right, is everything. Okay. The break or the tear is a guarantee. We're gonna break or we're gonna tear. What's not a guarantee though is the repair. And think about it. I don't know if you come from a super heavy repairy family that created all these corrective emotional experiences or not. Either way, you have a frame of reference of what it felt like to have a repair or what it didn't feel like. And so many families that I work with, they feel like, oh crap, the toothpaste is out of the tube. And I wish I would have called you years ago. And while there's some validity to that maybe we would have been dealing with more what's called cognitive plasticity, and we would have got a brain that's maybe a little bit more malleable, and maybe some of those neural pathways weren't so entrenched on either side. There's never a time that's like too late to repair. You can call your parent on their deathbed, or your parent can call you and say, hey, look, I was reflecting on what happened 20 years ago. And I just want you to know I'm so sorry for having done that, or I'm so sorry for missing why that was so important to you, or not really being there, or not being as emotionally attached. That's probably going to solicit some serious tears and connections and forge a path towards empathy. Now, depending upon what they did, I know words could be cheap, and trust is built through behavior change and time, but still, it's a freaking start, right? It's a freaking start. And just remember again, like if you have a kid who has an inner critic already, that's where this is being built, right? That inner critic loves the space and time to just stew and find evidence as to what's wrong with them, or why are they so dumb, or why are they an idiot? And especially again, if we fed them, and before you like beat yourself with the shame stick, again, we're focusing here today on repairing people, not on beating ourselves up. We all make mistakes, and yes, the second peak of the Four Peaks parent program, right? The program that the families, go through, where I take them on a journey from where they currently are in that dynamic that might be chaotic and dysfunctional, or just not at its best, to high functionality. Well, that second peak is called emotional mastery. That's not like that's a coincidence, right? Because myself and so many parents need to become the masters of our emotions, and we have to become regulated before we try to go and regulate our kids, right? So yes, we should absolutely look at the tearing and try to tear less and create less damage, of course, Avi. But if we're not doing the repairing work, we are leaving so much healing, so much attachment, so much connection on the table. I already mentioned the words corrective emotional experience. That's what it's called in therapy talk, right? And that's what a good therapist is, or a good coach is maybe you didn't get what you needed from mom or dad, but this third party, this person, right, can be someone that you can work things through with. I can't tell you how many female teenagers or young adults have told me that I'm the healthiest male they've ever met. Now, again, that's me, professional Tom Miller. I like to believe I'm pretty healthy in my personal life. You could call my wife and some other people who could corroborate that, hopefully, or not. But the point is that I have become someone that they can work through, whether it's intimacy issues, some other trauma with, and I get to provide for them what the idyllic kind of male, if you will, figure or let's say helpful guide could be. I've been people's uncles, I've been people's even aunts, I've been people's fathers, mothers, grandfathers, bosses, leaders, etc. Right. So that's what my clients make me become in a good way. And I'm willing to step into those shoes. And that's the same thing that you can do for your kid is through that repairing. Again, you help them edit those unhealthy negative self-talk that will stick with them forever and might push them into trying to overperform to compensate and become incredibly type A and not have much joy or pull deeply 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 back into a depression or being, someone who's sitting on the sidelines and never ever coming forward or just always having it be an assumptive conclusion that they're to blame and falling on their sword and just taking responsibility and crap for others because again they don't have that self-esteem, that self-love because they weren't shown how conflict is actually a bridge towards deeper and greater intimacy, and conflict actually can create greater personal freedom. And on the other side of this tearing, you and your child, believe it or not, can have a much deeper, more securely attached relationship. You got to trust me. So real quick, there's no real like secret sauce to like what is the repair formula. I kind of have a little bit of like the Tom Miller formula here, but don't overthink it, right? The key is like you got to go to them, right? And it doesn't have to be like 3 seconds later because maybe you do need to calm down because maybe your kid did say something pretty rude or they did really, provoke and push your buttons and then you did lose it and you got to get regulated. But you got to go to them. And so here's a quick little formula, something like this, okay? Hey, I was just thinking about our interaction and I feel really crummy about my behavior. I'm so sorry for doing X or Y thing, right? Whatever the heck you just did. That's my bad. I take full responsibility for my part and I want to understand how you feel as a result of my action. Now, that's kind of like Dalai Lama next level stuff right there. you know, that's like Gandhi level, if you will, or maybe Brene Brown or Tony Robbins or whoever. You don't have to be that good. It's just really about taking responsibility for your part, validating how your behavior made them feel. Here's a cool little thing you could say too to engage them. So, like, how do you think this thing should go next time? Which is really nice and open ended. Now, they might not say anything or they might not own their part, but that's a perfect little cue for them to be like, I realize I shouldn't have said, I can't believe we're having this again, or that's like so gross. And you always make the same crap, which is exactly what my son freaking said, meaning said to provoke me. And we did have a little repair sesh, and it was a little bit more funny because my son is very sarcastic. He has a wonderful sense of humor. I don't know where he gets it, but it's great. So it's fine to kind of make this be wrapped in your own culture of your relationship. But I like the how do you think this should go next time? It could be crickets, 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 or maybe they say, oh, I think I need to do this and this better. And maybe like keep my mouth shut and not, like be such a jackass or whatever. And then you could say, well, what do you need from me? And they might say, learn to take a chill pill, learn to relax. It's just a joke. Don't take anything so personal, whatever. Okay, cool. And then you could say, if they're not willing to insert anything, hey, it would mean a lot to me if next time, right, you could just shut up. No, don't say shut up. But if you could like, hold your tongue a little or just like be mindful of like how much goes into these dinners. And you could, anytime you want to go shopping, I mean that sincerely with me or cook, that would be super cool. So please, please, please take home. The major take home is that like no matter what has happened, it is never too late to repair. And also think about just as you are blaming yourself, they are doing the same. And if we want them to either be like perpetual blame shifters or be perpetual like blame takers honors, that's a really weird word, then don't repair. And that's going to continue to kick their butts and your butts and kind of roughshod all over you, and get off of the like shame, like, get out of the shame, come down off the shame cross, right? There's a great expression from AA. I'm not in recovery, but have done so much recovery work with other clients, and come down off the cross, we can use the wood. So if you come down off the cross and you go and build something with your kids metaphorically now, or a real birdhouse vis-a-vis a repairing birdhouse, or you build something that's toward repairing, you're going to have that much more of a better relationship. And it's going to change the narrative they have about themselves, which is going to inform every freaking relationship they have, and it will make or break the future of every relationship they have. You could do this, people. Hardest job in the world. Got love for y'all. Have a great freaking day. Bye. Hey everyone, Thomas here. First off, it means the world to me that you took the time to listen to my podcast. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Also, if you want to receive the latest podcast updates, as well as expert parenting tips and practical strategies for navigating your tween, teen, or young adults challenges directly to your inbox, then sign up for my newsletter. The link is in the description. And most importantly, if you're tired of feeling overwhelmed, stuck, stressed, and are losing sleep because you're constantly worried about your tween, teen, or young adult, your first step is to realize that you still have a choice and can do something about it. I'm ready to help you take action and create the results you desire today. Just go to fourpeaksparents.com and book a free strategy call. Let's do this. Last thing, while you were listening to this show, who was the one person that you thought could really benefit from hearing it? Please share it with them.